Welcome back to Irish Illustrated Insider. It is Monday, June 9th. I'm Tim O'Malley, joined today by Drew Mentok and Eric Thomas of Irish Illustrated. Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated will also be joining us shortly, but Drew and Eric were at Irish Invasion on Friday, along with Irish Illustrated recruiting reporter Brian Alt. And I wanted to get your thoughts, guys, in segment one. Obviously, the six guys offered takes precedent here, so we'll go through some of them. But there's some other things you guys are able to observe, whether it be from I keep seeing media scrum interviews, so I can only picture what that was like. I've seen some media scrums in my time at bowl games. The media scrum interviews are what you were able to see on the field. And very quickly, for people that read our practice reports, I assume this was similar from what I read, that you are on the outside of the field. So at times, if you're listening, you can't see me drawing a rectangle right now. But if you're watching, you're on the outside of the fields. At times, you cannot see everything going on out there. So perspective is sometimes, hey, I was right in front of this position group, or they were 200 yards away and this guy looked fast. But to kind of start off, I wanted to get Drew really quickly. Jackson Vaughn, defensive end from Bergen Catholic. I saw Eric's article. Of the six offered, I know Eric, as he wrote it, felt that that might be the alpha dog, and you felt that Drew is a coming five-star.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know as much about, the recruiting, especially the kids who just finished their freshman season as Eric would. So I come in and I see this kid kind of just winning every rep, super fast and electric off the edge. He's not super broad, but he has like long arms, and it's kind of one of those things that then you check your notes and like, oh, this kid's just a freshman. He's only 15. Like, so then you kind of just keep watching him, and it's not just that he's athletic. There's like a real competitive edge to him as well. And he was going against older guys. They were having him line up inside sometimes. And there were some times where he got kind of maybe like a slightly little dirty shot or something, got knocked to the ground and just like still fought through, got into the backfield and got the sack too. So I think was just impressive all around, and somebody who, I mean, I think he already has 40 offers. A lot of programs are already on him as well. So I'm sure there's a lot of battle going on for this kid, but it's good that Notre Dame got him onto the campus over the weekend and got to see him work out in person.
Eric, you also hit on Taj and Chaz Gray. Taj Gray is a 28 class of 28 linebacker, where Chaz is a 27 defensive end. What's the inroads there? And what was kind of the leading into that offer for the Grays?
Yeah, they're a really good pair of prospects. Like when we met with them for media interviews after the fact, even just in street clothes, you could see the natural length. You could see kind of the athletic builds and the frames that they have. Taj is listed as a linebacker, but he also has some flexibility to kind of come down to the edge. And we saw that in the competitive periods at the end of practice. He was one of the guys called out. They basically did a line, 5 1-on-1s in a row, set up an offensive line with 5 rushers to go against them. And he was, I think, for my notes, the fourth guy to go. He went against not one of the ND commits. He went against one of the other prospects there, and he just like dominated the rep, like came right off the side really fast, won the rep quickly with speed, barely got touched. One of two guys in the drill who just like barely got a hand on him. And it was a really impressive way to end camp. For both of those two guys, I think that they're, from a premium program in New Jersey, St. Joseph Regional, the same program that produced Howard Cross. So for Notre Dame, they're really trying to invest heavily in New Jersey in this cycle. We saw it with the guys who were there in.
I was reading your story and I kept going down at Bergen Catholic, St.
Yeah,
Joseph Regional, Don Bosco Prep. I was like, all right, let's.
the New Jersey contingent was real and very talented. And I think this is just another investment for them. Is we've seen Notre Dame kind of try and set up these tentpole states. Obviously, North Carolina is one of them, Texas, California. Some of these are historic, but New Jersey is one that historically has been in Notre Dame's corner. The last couple of seasons, we've seen guys like Adon Schuler come from that area, Elijah Burris, Nolan James, but it hasn't necessarily been the big swing that we saw in like 2018, 2019, when you're getting the Adam Alolas, Brandon Wimbush a little bit before that, Shane Simon going after Cody Simon. So I think for Notre Dame, this is as much about let's just get in these schools and get after, quality prospects like this as it was, these two guys coming in here and blowing up the performance. This is a big swing in New Jersey from Notre Dame.
And we might as well stick with Don Bosco Prep and cornerback Phoenix Evans, a 2008 prospect. At first, I saw his size, and then I thought, well, he's 2028, not so. That's actually 5'9", 160 is not all that undersized. What did you see from Evans? And is this? It's not exactly yet recruiting to body type for what Notre Dame has been bringing in at corner, but what are kind of his attributes that has Notre Dame in on him early?
He's throughout the course of the day, the biggest thing you saw from Evans is that he fought. Like he early on in the drills, he looked good in doing like change of directions. He looked really good, just like breaking down and being able to adjust, his coverage and kind of switch his hips and things like that. And then when they went to the like competitive portions, working with receivers, there were a couple of tough reps in the immediate term. As I recall, one of those was against Alpha Dog Rob Larson, so I can't really blame him. As the day went on, though, like he made every single rep a fight. Even when he would lose reps, it was like he's hanging on the guy from behind and they made a tough catch. Okay, you can live with that. And then as it went on towards the one-on-ones, like consistently, as other guys were starting to get gassed, you would see guys kind of starting to do the, hands on the knees, breathing hard, whatever else. He just got stronger. He was like, all right, you guys are tired. I'm ready to compete. And that's what he looked like right to the end. In the competitive portion, again, he had a really tough coverage. I believe the catch was made in that assignment, but he was like draped all over the guy. He's a really good competitor. And as far as the size goes, he elevates really well.
Mhm.
So we'll see if he grows and that continues to be something where it's like, oh, okay, like he's normal size and he elevates well. Right now he's a little bit smaller, but like when you saw him go up and get the ball, when he would time his jumps well, he was very competitive even for stuff thrown up, kind of up here for catches above the eyes.
Not a little bit smaller, class of 2028, Jacksonville product, Asher Gioto, 6'5", 240. That's a load coming out of your freshman season.
Yeah. Yeah. He did not participate because of illness, yet when he walked up to interviews, it was like shocking how large he is. Um, the frame is, I don't know if it's a tapped out frame at this point, 6'5", 240, like you said, but he is
Right.
broad. He just has a lot of muscle already packed onto that frame. Like he looked like a kid who, if you were to put him in a college football program like right now, you'd be like, oh yeah, he's probably like a year away, and this
Mhm.
kid's a freshman. So it's pretty unbelievable. He also has a pretty absurd offer list at this point, 38. So he's one of the two guys on this list who's 2028 with 40 something offers. That's going to be a fight. But when you look at the stats for him, 66 total tackles last year, 21 of those were for a loss. So 32% of his tackles are coming in the backfield, and that's playing both end and interior. It's a little bit eye popping.
Yeah, that's coming out of a freshman season
In Florida too.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
Florida too. That's he didn't duck into a Connecticut. No, can't say that anymore. Notre Dame has a entire net over Connecticut. It wasn't coming from Alaska, but sixth and final offer. I found this one interesting, Eric Thomas, because you reported it's his first offer. You don't see that a lot, but it is from I think a lot of Irish fans will recognize Servite High School, of course, in Anaheim. The esteemed Troy Nicholas, one of the greatest interviews of all time, is from Servite. Alan Kennet the fifth.
Yeah, I didn't get to see a ton of Allen throughout the course of the day because the linebackers were primarily working within the field house along with the defensive ends and offensive linemen. But in the early portions of the drills, we got a chance to see all the linebackers and some of the ends working together doing short area drills, like shuttle drills, things like that. And watching Alan Kennet move was a little bit eye opening because he didn't look like he moved like a regular linebacker. There was a lot of twitch there. There's a lot of quickness. And you could see kind of the athletic profile on display. And from that aspect, just in those initial drills, I only wrote down a handful of linebackers and I wrote down his name 3 times. Like, whoa, good rep. Whoa, good rep. Just kept doing it because the change of direction, which I think you'll see from him, like if you're projecting as a linebacker, guy hasn't played it, it's going to be his ability to make reads and kind of trigger on the ball, right? That quickness and that ability to flip his hips and read react. He has all of the tools to be able to do that. And ultimately, for Notre Dame projecting out an athlete, I think they saw enough in this drill work and enough in his frame as a young player that they said, well, the tools are unique enough for the position that if we don't offer, we're going to be behind on an ascending player.
Drew, you had an offensive line review for the board that actually became a defensive line review at one point because the defensive linemen were winning. Although, let's give a little credit to that drill. It does seem to favor the defense, right? But you have some context to add to that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do think you're right. Like without shoulder pads on, like there's hardly anything for the offensive lineman to hold on to. So I think that's worth noting. But there, we're 4-star 2027 prospect Cameron Wagner was there working out at tackle. He moved to left and right side, and just based on what I saw, I'm obviously not an offensive line expert, but just he was kind of jumping the snap and just still couldn't seem to even come close to getting a hand on guys. And it wasn't just defensive ends like Jackson Vaughn who were beating him. There were also times where they lined up. I believe it was Jeremiah Williams, who's, a 6 foot, 300 pound, defensive lineman who was off the edge and still I felt like he was having trouble getting hands on players like that too. So I'd be curious what Notre Dame kind of does with him going forward if he's still somebody they pursue. But at least on the outside at tackle, I didn't see much there over the weekend that would warrant like him ending up in Notre Dame, but also maybe there's some traits that I'm not missing. But he just seemed to struggle to kind of keep up and mirror the guy going at him, even if he's kind of at a disadvantage with that. And then the two Notre Dame commits were also there in Sullivan Garvin and Ben Nichols, both also struggled. Although I will note, like you could see the athleticism in there, and both are quite large human beings for rising seniors in high school. I think Sullivan I overheard was up to like 316, 317 already, ran a 4 or 5 second 40-yard dash. I'm sure that's hand time, but you can kind of get a sense for how well he moved, and he is like a competitor. But again, in some of those one-on-one drills, at times was bringing a defensive end inside, so that's going to be an extra tough task for a guy like that. But they also kind of struggled. But again, I think at least with those compared to Wagner, you saw that they moved a little bit better. And sometimes it was just them not being able to get hands on it. But then there are other times too where they just like lost the hand battle and other guys were able to knock their hands off of him and they didn't even have a chance to. So overall, I mean, they're 3-star prospects. So I don't think this means like they shouldn't be a take. There's a lot of attributes there that Notre Dame should be really excited about, and they need a lot of guards in this class too. And those are two local ones who have really good side. Nichols is up to I think 336 too, so he's even bigger kid who also moves well. So they just might take longer to develop than maybe people would hope, but they yeah, a lot of good attributes, but also some struggling in one-on-ones.
I'm going to continue to bury the lead with the quarterbacks and go down to a few of the interviews. I know Brian Alt had Rob Larson, but Eric, you interviewed class of 27 running back Andrew Beard and also tight end Jack Brown. I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on those two because I know you're impressed with the tight end contingent.
Yeah, I'll start with Beard. I thought overall the running backs had kind of a mixed day. It wasn't that they were necessarily bad. It was just there wasn't a ton of really big standouts in that group. Beard was the lone exception to that. The way he moves, the foot speed is a little bit different. And I compare it for people who remember my coverage of Irish Invasion last year. I compare it to Elijah Burris, where like you look at him and visibly he's just moving at a different speed than everybody else. His foot speed, just like the way he can chop and break down, is different. So I thought that was impressive. He runs good routes. He catches like a running back, but he runs good routes. So that was an important point for him. And then the tight ends, once again, you want to talk about drops. The tight ends must have had like group movie night with popcorn before this event because not one of them could hold on to the ball. But they all looked really good running their routes. They looked pretty good actually breaking down and getting low in their transitions, like dropping their weight at the top of their routes, things like that. And it was weird. They had a seemingly larger than normal contingent of really big bodied tight ends who are actually vertical threats. So they're built like they should be like jump ball specialists, but that's not what they do. They're like get over your head and you just can't quite keep up with them because they're striding so long. Brown was one of those guys. Jackson Dollar was one of those guys. Seneca Driver, another top end tight end, was kind of one of those guys, although I think he might be a little different. The way he moves is another one where it's just a little bit different. So the tight ends were just extremely impressive top to bottom. Just need to hold on the ball.
Yeah, and I didn't get to watch all the tight end one-on-ones or anything, but Seneca Driver, just seeing that kid in person looks different. He's like, I think we talked about it after like an Eli Raridan type of look, like, oh man, like, and I only saw him take one rep and I think he made that catch and it was kind of a jump ball, but yeah, he definitely looks different.
Three quarterbacks to discuss, and we'll start with kind of the headliner, I think, for 2027 and Malachi Ziegler, Benton, Louisiana product. Maybe this is everybody's waiting for the first quarterback offer coming in 27. Eric, is that something you see on the horizon?
I don't know why he left campus without an offer. It's not, look, I'm not paid to give out these offers as a reason, but when I watched Malachi, it confirmed all of the high point views that I had of him. Now, look, there's a lot to prove. Malachi was a first year starter last year. The team went 1-9. He had, I think it was either 3 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions, or 6-6, one of the two. He was an incomplete product, and the team had wholesale changes. They have new coaching staff, everything brought in. What I like about Malachi is when you watch his film from last year, you see a kid who is just under barrage, just pressure at every turn, doesn't have a lot of outlets, doesn't have a lot of help around him, and he just finds a way to escape pressure, deliver a good ball, and the ball like bounces off a kid's head and gets picked off. And it's like, well, okay. Um, Watching him in person, you see those tools. Like the footwork is so clean. And for people who have heard me talk about Noah Grubbs, my biggest question about Grubbs is I don't like the way his lower body does not seem to work in concert with his arm to generate accuracy, to generate velocity. Ziegler is like teach shape perfect with that stuff. I mean, he looked like a solid package, very condensed throwing motion. He was accurate throughout the day. He won the accuracy challenge at the end of the event. He can generate velocity easily, but he doesn't rely on just delivering line drives, which is a very common thing for big armed high school quarterbacks. He made a point to add some touch and some loft to some balls throughout the course of the day. I just came away really impressed, thinking that this was confirmation of everything you would hope to see from a guy like Malachi Ziegler. I guess the one note that I can pass along from 27, they did tell another quarterback who performed well there, and I'll keep that name redacted, that they were going to continue to monitor him through the first few games of his season. I would say that throughout the course of the day, that quarterback probably didn't shine as much as Ziegler. So from my perspective, it looked a little bit different. But from Notre Dame's perspective, process wise, that might give us a little bit of an insight into how they're approaching this. They want to see Friday night competition, but I need to speak with some folks to see if that's a universal thing or if that's a kind of case by case basis moving forward here.
228 guys quickly. Neiman Lawrence from Miami Northwestern, and then Oaks Christian, California. Notre Dame fans should immediately recognize that one as well. Trevon Towns, Eric and Drew. Did you guys get a good look at either one of them?
I got a good look at both. Towns, I'll just say accurate, big arm. He was probably the only quarterback who had a claim to be as accurate as Ziegler across the whole course of the day. Ball zips off his hand. Very good prospect and had a good day, especially throwing on the run. Lawrence had a less consistent day. The tools were the best of the camp. I mean, at one point in warmups, he uncorked like a 35 yard pass. I saw from across the field, so distance is tough. But he uncorked a pass just like off his back foot that was on a rope. And then to celebrate, he did what for most quarterbacks, like if they did the jumping motion he did, it would be like, oh yeah, that guy's just getting loose or whatever. But watching Lawrence do it, it looked like a wide receiver who was like prepping himself to catch balls in the boundary, like easy elevation, was basically floating in the air, looked like he was just joking around. The athleticism just oozes when you watch Neiman Lawrence. So he was pretty unbelievable from that perspective. You can just see it.
Oaks Christian, California, of course, was home of one Jimmy Clausen. I'm going to go ahead and cherry pick and say if Trevon Towns wants to have a junior year of 28 touchdowns and 4 picks, 3 of which were not his fault, Irish fans would take that in the near future. We are joined now and aptly timed Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated. Thank you very much, Tim, for popping on because we're about to talk about your film review. Jonathan Sanderson, point guard, and we will then get to new breaking news. But I think the Jonathan Sanderson pledge Friday, late Friday, I believe, is something that can kind of bridge the Marcus Burton era that could end at any point because Burton obviously will have professional prospects somewhere after his 2025-26 season.
Yeah, I watched a ton of tape of Sanderson beginning in fourth grade. You see his ball handling skills in fourth grade. But I think that explains the kind of ball handler that he is. He's really good. I think he's probably rated a little high because I don't know that he's a great athlete. He's a very good athlete. Excellent point guard, more of a score first guy at the point guard position, at least at this point. But I think that he makes the players around him better, and he controls the tempo of the game, when he's on the court with his teammates. And so I think it's an excellent catch. It was made a lot easier by the hiring of his father as a strength and conditioning coach. Great. I think he has a chance to be a great shooter, real quiet release, very soft at the rim. Some of the things that I think are a little concerning, his dad's a strength and conditioning coach. He's listed at 6'2". With a running start, he can dunk. He's got some hops, but not great size necessarily around the rim. He's become resourceful. He's learned how to score around the rim as he's gotten older. And one thing that I noticed from last year, there's he gets greater elevation on his jump shot. He shoots off the dribble, and he's capable of getting a lot more elevation than he did when he was younger, when he was kind of a set shot shooter. Say that 10 times real quickly. But You know,
You don't want those set shot shooters either, so you don't want to say it
no,
too many times. Yeah.
you really don't. But he has a nice release and it's very soft. You know, and he's a point guard, and so I think he has to learn to be probably distributor first. Is he Matt Farrell? I don't know anybody that has the toughness of Matt Farrell, but I think Jonathan Sanderson's a tough-minded kid. You look at his interviews, you look at the way he composes himself on the court. You know, he's very serious about what he's doing. I think he plays the game with maturity. So it's a nice catch. The 7'1" Sonongo, I'm not sure or Solongo, I'm sorry. We haven't done a film review on him yet. There isn't a ton of film that I saw at first blush, but you know, I think he looks like a pretty good athlete for a guy that's 7 foot or 7'1". He's got a little bit of bounce to him. He is a large presence on the basketball court. But I don't think he probably doesn't really completely understand how to play the game yet. So he's a project, but legitimate size. And I think some athletic instincts that maybe that you don't necessarily see out of a guy like Keba Jai, the current big man.
And if you listen to last week's Irish Illustrated Insider podcast, John Bryce mentioned that Solongo, the adopted son of John Sanderson, Notre Dame's strength and conditioning coach, was a player to watch. So shout out to JB for that one. And Gon Erdine Solongo is what I'm going with. That is the phonetic spell I'm going now because I have seen Ghana as in Ghana Solongo.
Fair enough.
So that's what we're going with until told differently.
I was going to call him GES, but that doesn't roll off your tongue really well. So
Yeah.
I'll say Solongo for now, but I think you got it, Tim.
I'll definitely defer to TP on the breakdown of the prospects, but I do think it's good too that Notre Dame's getting in. I know they're just going to spend their senior year at Lalamere, but kind of continuing that pipeline and that connection to a program that's not that far. It's a Catholic school, or at least used to be. And I believe their head coach is still Pat Holmes, who, you know, spent time at Notre Dame as a student manager. So the more they can kind of stay there and keep kind of having those local top end prospects coming to Notre Dame and having that connection is definitely a good thing.
To that point, Drew, the last 2 seasons, Jalen Harrelson from La Lumiere, #1 ranked prospect in Notre Dame in the internet recruiting history for Notre Dame men's basketball. Sanderson's #4. So in 2 seasons, they've added 2 of their top 5 players in the internet era the last 20 years out of La Lumiere. I'd say that's a pipeline worth mining.
Speaking of Notre Dame guys, Tim Priester did an interview last week with former Notre Dame linebacker Jack Shields. Of course, people know now Jack for the Jack and Kathy Shields Family Hall, and TP were about a week past getting your thoughts on this, but JB was able to chime in for his new relationship with Jack, and I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that interview.
Well, yeah, Notre Dame football fans probably don't remember Jack Shields, the linebacker, mainly because he spent the first 3 years at Notre Dame behind Bob Crable, and then he had to deal with Mark Zavagnin and Mike Larkin and Joe Rodzinski and a bunch of other good linebackers. He felt he was good enough to play. He made that very clear to me. But
Bob Crable had a few tackles in his Irish career, though.
Oh boy, yeah, more than any other Notre Dame football player, and I don't see that record.
That's never getting broken. It will never be broken.
I guess unless a guy started as a true freshman, but even then,
Manti didn't get that close.
Yeah, they don't rack up numbers like that now. The game was a lot different, but you know, I think John Bryce, I think he explained him pretty well because I think you have one conversation with Jack Shields and you feel, you know, like that you're one of his best friends, and that's because of the person and the personality that makes you feel that way. But you know, he will be known for the guy that paid for the new facility, along with 4 other Notre Dame football players who are heavily involved, including Pat Kramer, who was actually one of the first Notre Dame football players I ever interviewed when I was still working for the Observer at Notre Dame. But you know, he will be known. Jack Shields will be known as the guy that built this facility for the current players. But I think there are 2 other groups of people that are at the top of his list of importance in this venture. And the one is, you know, the former players. It's very important. In fact, I ran into Marcus Freeman at the fantasy camp on Thursday and made a point of telling him my conversation with Jack Shields about how important it is to him to have a place within the new facility where former players can go. Former players show up on campus now. All of the employees aren't old enough to remember who the heck they are. And there has to be a central location for those players to gather. And so that was really important to Jack Shields. But also, he is really big on former football players just in general that, like we have a recent example, and I'm not saying Isaac Rochelle falls into this category, other than how old is Isaac Rochelle, Tim?
He's 10 years out because this would be his
Okay.
10th year. So yeah.
He's in his early 30s, but a lot of guys
Yeah.
in their professional career in their 20s, and then they have the rest of their lives to live. And
Right.
so Jack Shields is really about making sure that the guys that when they leave professional football or when they leave college football, statistics show that those guys go through a real tough adaptation. There's a level of there's a level of depression that can ensue after that, and I mean, I totally get that, because your whole identity at that stage of your life, you're in your say late 20s, early 30s, your whole identity is that of a football player. So those people need tending to, and he's all about that as well. And so, I mean, I think this is one of the great humanitarians that I've ever spoken with. I never interviewed him when he was a player at Notre Dame. His last year at Notre Dame as a football player, the season of 1982 was my first year as a
Right.
journalist.
I was trying to put
Right.
that together, but
Right.
the second semester thing ruins it every time.
Right, exactly. So, I could have known him, but I didn't, because he wasn't a prominent player, and we talked to other players at that time. But really impressed with him. I know Bryce said that he invited him to go down and play golf with him. There's a lot of invitations going out these days to people that are in contact with him, but I hope to take advantage of that. He actually did promise me a tour of the facility when it's done, and I'm absolutely going to hold him to that, because I would imagine Notre Dame will probably reach out to us and give us some kind of opportunity, but I don't think everybody will get a tour from Jack Shields. So I will do my best to hold him to that.
And I think you should take him up on that, as opposed to the golf round as well that JB might have to go out and do instead of. I don't know. I've not seen you golf, Priester, but I know I couldn't do it. But I'm going to say maybe you should throw him a change up or something like that a couple times,
Yeah.
as opposed to doing the golf round.
My sports involve a ball that's moving, not one that's sedentary. I gave up on golf quite a while ago.
Yes. Looking to upgrade your wardrobe? Founded by Notre Dame alum Go Wang, you've seen ESQ's custom clothing on the player walk and all of your favorite players and coaches. With more than a decade of making the best bespoke clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention Irish Illustrated and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. We'll be back with segment 2, Burning Up the Boards.
Segment 2, Burning Up the Boards. We start with a question from a familiar asker of questions on Irish Illustrated Insider. Pin and poll. Every program values their early evaluations. Which position groups currently warrant the most deference at Notre Dame?
There's a few of them you can jump to here. I think just based off of recent success, you kind of have to start that conversation with defensive back and the work Mike Mickens has done. Whether it's 4-star players, whether it's 3-star players, when Notre Dame gets in on these guys, they are pretty convicted that these are going to be good players. And the proof kind of speaks for itself in recent history. Beyond that, I think that whether you're looking at the budding J1 Sider era and what he did at Penn State versus like Dylan McCullough previously, there's an established track record of successfully identifying running backs. That is a great position for Notre Dame. Obviously, a lot more blue chip guys in the ranks that at least ended up signing with Notre Dame. So maybe the evaluations are a little bit more telegraphed, but they consistently hit at that point as well. And then the other one I'll give is offensive line. And that kind of ties into another question later. But you look at some of the evaluations that Notre Dame has done at offensive line over the years. Former tight end Joe Alt, under-recruited prospect Anthony Knapp. Obviously, they have several guys who just left the program, including one Pat Coogan, who was a 3-star that Notre Dame initially passed on and then circled back to. Like, they find talent at this position and are able to bring in guys regardless of the ranking and kind of put themselves in the top class for offensive line. So that one deserves a shout out as well. I would say tight end, but obviously there's a lot of proving ground right now on the roster with tight ends. Maybe we'll hold off on that one until the Eli Raritan breakout actually happens.
Yeah, I agree with, I mean, defensive back, you can't really question
Yeah.
Mike Mickens, even going back to, I mean, Marcus Freeman always brings up Sauce Gardner for a good reason, because he was like ranked the 1,000th player in the country, and Mike Mickens adamantly pushed for him. I agree. Offensive line also throwing in, Anthony Knapp. I mean, that was a guy we wouldn't have thought was starting at left tackle as a freshman, and that's somebody Joe Rudolph went out and was adamant about pursuing. Um, I mean, I think linebacker also, there's a lot of reason to really be high on their evaluation at that position, although that's another spot where they're, often getting one of the 3 to 5 best linebackers in the country every class for the last several years. So it's also the guys that everyone thinks is good that they're getting and that
Yeah.
are coming in at starting. So maybe that's a little different. But again, with Mike Mickens, it's if he thinks a 3-star guy is good, then you have to be high on that guy, or higher than you would otherwise be.
I mean, I think it's the Mickens thing's incredible because it's his first class at Notre Dame that was the one that no one hit, right? And ever since then, he's been fantastic. It was Riley, JoJo Johnson, Barnes, and Tucker.
Man,
Rough.
He got it. He found his footing thereafter. Now, name some other guys like Benjamin Morrison and Leonard Moore and Caleb. It's incredible how it's changed.
Yeah. Well, and those are the guys he had the least amount of time to
Yeah,
evaluate too. I
yeah.
guess he kind of had to come in and I'm sure the board was completely different than what he had at Cincinnati. So
Mhm.
once
That's true.
now he's going even earlier. And I guess we're seeing that if he's identifying a kid as a sophomore or whatever, that there's a lot of reason to be like, okay, like we should look at this kid seriously.
speaking of, let me just throw this in. You guys are commenting on recruiting, having been at Notre Dame this weekend, but uh, I'm working on a story, the best of the worst, the lowest rated players at Notre Dame of
Mhm.
the century. Have you guys done anything like that? Did
Just
you?
in Monday Musings, yeah. And the crazy thing is how much better they are. How many more you have to look at now than you did 15
Yeah,
years ago, where you're
yeah,
like, nope, 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 nope.
yeah.
It's
Well,
like
Pat,
Tyler
Pat
Eifert pops into mind at first, and
yeah, yeah.
that's
Well,
that's
Pat Coogan's going to be on my list
yeah,
because
yeah.
he was rated way down there, and
Weiss
I
loved
realize
Eifert
that
though, right? Weiss loved Eifert, didn't he?
yeah,
I remember talking to Jack Nolan about it at a practice, and Jack was like, I'm looking at this kid because he was skinny. And remember, he had the back injury too beforehand. He's like, how is the coach of the Patriots, the offensive coordinator of the Patriots, think this kid's going to be a player? Because he was just so small. He
yeah.
looked like Goodman a little bit, like he was that
Well,
size.
yeah, that was a tough eval because he was a wide receiver in high
Yeah,
school, and you're
yeah,
projecting him because he's 6'6". You're projecting
yeah.
him as a tight end, but
Such a great blocker. He became such a great college blocker too. Like
yeah,
that's a strange one. Well, he's on
yeah,
your list, so there you go.
yeah.
This next question, I had a lot of questions, guys, about Tim Priester's first rate series, annual first rate series. It began with quarterback as usual, and I'm going to sum it up by this question is from the Four Horsemen Lounge for Tim Priester. Apparently, how dare you? To add context, Tim Priester ranked the quarterbacks from 12 to 1, including Notre Dame, the regular
13,
season.
13 to 1,
Oh,
including Notre
13.
Dame.
Yeah, 13 to 1 nowadays, of course. Stanford last, followed by Syracuse, Purdue, Boston College, NC State, Notre Dame, Navy, A&M Arkansas, USC, Pitt, Boise, and Miami. The consternation seems to be over Carson Beck at Miami being 1, but I guess Notre Dame at 9 is probably what made people a little bit more up in arms.
Wasn't it 8? Didn't I have him at 8? Yeah, I had him at 8.
8.
Yeah,
Made it. I already made it worse on you.
and really this is the 15th annual. I can't believe it. 15. I've done this for going into 15th year here now. And invariably, and I understand the questions. Invariably, we come out of this, and the first question is, well, you're just rating it based upon statistics accumulated prior to this year. Well, I mean that has a lot to do with it because that makes you a proven commodity or not. And I understand that Carson Beck struggled last year. He threw 12 interceptions. His touchdown to interception ratio isn't great throughout his career, but I think that he's going to have a bounce back year this year. I think he put a lot of pressure on himself last year. It was a less than Georgia-like wide receiver room. It was a running game that wasn't up to typical Georgia standards. And so I think you add that up with him. I think he pressed a little bit because he was trying to position himself for the NFL draft.
That's how I felt about Beck.
Yeah,
He was an
right,
extremely highly
right.
rated prospect coming in, and then it was not developing that way.
So I understand all of that from last year, but I'm not just going to say he's no good. He a year ago now, everybody was high on Carson Beck. I think most people were. He struggled a little bit because of various reasons, and it's on him. It's on him too. But a guy that's thrown almost 1,000 passes, I'm not just going to disregard that. I think that he's going to go to Miami and have a good year. Now, one of our subscribers, we got into a nice debate there about Miami's receivers, or the transfers aren't that good. Most of them are on defense. I think they have the third-rated transfer class in the country, and I realize I think only one, maybe two are receivers. I get all that, but I'm not going to look at it like a fan. I'm going to try to objectively evaluate it like an evaluator. And so I'm going to put him number one, partly because I don't know that there's a clear number two. Madsen from Boise State's 5'10". He's not going to play in the NFL. He doesn't have a strong arm, but he's a great leader and is resourceful. And I know he benefited from Genty running the football last year, but he also threw for 3,000 yards, had 23 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. How do I not rate that guy ahead of CJ Carr, who, if it was CJ Carr, the 4-star quarterback about to start for Boston College, nobody would comment on him being rated 8th on this list. But he is the least experienced quarterback. And again, I'm projecting that he's the starter, the least inexperienced quarterback on the 13 teams that I'm evaluating. So doing the best that I can here, man, trying to be objective. I like Holstein from is it Holstein or Holstein from Pittsburgh? I think that he's just getting started. He went to Alabama out of high school and then transferred to Pitt. I have USC fourth with Maeva.
I like
really,
what I mean, against Notre, he was
no,
so
he did. But
if
you were to ask fans of a couple other teams that he played against, they weren't very impressed with him.
Well, he had the best game I've ever seen where he threw 2 full-field interception touchdowns too. I would say that would be
exactly right. He did that. And so that's what fans of other teams that he played against saw. The guy I really, really think is an up-and-comer is Taylon Green from Arkansas. I think he's an exceptional athlete. He has good size. He can run. He's a beautiful athlete when he's on the run. He throws a pretty looking ball just like CJ Carr does, only he has experience and he's proven that he's going to be really, really good. There was one comment about if the Navy quarterback is better than CJ Carr, then we're in trouble or something along those lines. The Navy quarterback is a great college quarterback.
I thought he might be higher on your list.
Yeah.
Actually.
Well, I mean, I'm not projecting. This isn't about NFL.
Yeah.
It's about who will have the best year. And frankly, if Carson Beck beats Notre Dame and is terrible the rest of the year, he will be remembered by everybody that's hearing this right now as a great quarterback against Notre Dame, and it'll be disregarded otherwise. But I realize that Steve Angeli is down low on the list, but I just don't think that he moves the needle ahead of. I could have put him ahead of the Boston College quarterback and the Purdue quarterback, but they have a little bit more experience. And I thought when I watched them, they showed some good things. I realized Angeli did as well. This now sounds like a big plea for everybody to believe me, and I apologize for that. But I'm just trying to be objective about this and not let the Notre Dame name or the CJ Carr name sway me when I'm comparing them to other guys that have a lot more experience going into the season.
I think I can sum that up with saying, how dare you? Again, there we are. From BL Caseburn, I hate being the guy who constantly asks, are we ever going to offer 27 quarterback? So instead I'll ask, given ND's relative success at getting arguably top 3 quarterbacks the last couple of transfer cycles, is the coaching staff taking its time knowing we have somewhat of a contingency plan with the portal in a couple of years? And he's obviously referencing that CJ Carr, Kenny Minchie is a multi-year starter.
I think that might be a thought in the back of the mind more than a driving force here. From what I can gather, it just sounds like Coach Gino Guidugli is not super sold on a lot of the 27 quarterbacks. And he doesn't feel that right now, if they were to offer a guy and he were to come back at any period of time in the next few weeks, months, whatever it is, and we're to say, okay, I want to commit, Notre Dame does not feel, for whatever reason, fully comfortable that they would have the right guy in place. given the the transfer success, I think that's obviously something in the back of their minds as a point of pride here. But I also think if we want to look at it from the other side, Notre Dame really wanted to add Deuce Knight after CJ Carr, and then they were going to have Noah Grubbs following that. That trajectory changed. Now it's Blake Hebert and Noah Grubbs. And the outlook and the long-term projection there for Notre Dame to need to stick the landing on 27 is different. You have a little bit more wiggle room for needing to stick that landing if you have super mutant Gumby man Deuce Knight in your quarterback room. They don't have that. So for Notre Dame, I think it's about as much as like due diligence and just wanting to cover their bases and make sure that they get this right at a moment where it's pretty critical that they need to, than it is the backup plans and the pivot points and everything like that. I think ultimately for Notre Dame, if you listen to the messaging from the head coach, from Marcus Freeman, if you listen to it from the staff, they are across the board focused on majoring in high school recruiting, minoring in the portal. I don't think that is going to change at quarterback as a driving force. I think the portal is always going to be the okay, do we have to pivot? And that will be where that conversation comes from, not we're going to look to pivot.
Yeah, I think if Notre Dame's like, well, we can always just turn to the portal, if that's their perspective, that would be a pretty bad sign. And like Eric said, that doesn't seem to be the case. But if they're like, yeah, we've done it before, we'll just go back to doing that, that would not bode well for the future, I would think.
I think that's fine to do when you're the coach coming into the program trying to change stuff, but not when you're in year 4 of your recruiting cycle as well.
Yeah.
But yes, it does exist though. That's why I think Gaduli can be cautious with his evaluations and who he wants, because it does exist in a couple of years. But that also implies that Hebert doesn't work out because you're accepting Carr or Minchie. I don't say both because one's going to leave. You're accepting Carr or Minchie as your starter for a couple of years here.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it says enough that they like Blake Hebert enough that they have to find somebody they like more than Blake Hebert.
And the
Or more than
feedback
Noah
was
Grubbs.
good on him this spring, just talking to some people. There, I think he wasn't in the competition for obvious reasons,
Yeah.
but like he impressed given the opportunity he had.
I think that, a lot of times when we follow recruiting, it's just you want a name, you want a body. It's not about a warm body. This is about playing for national championships now because you just did it. And so that's the goal. And so like I saw some comment from Gaduli about what a terrible job he's doing. I think Riley Leonard developed pretty damn well over the course of last season. He's got to get some credit for that. It's not about just getting a body in here. And I think that's a great point, Eric, about Hebert changed the perspective. That wasn't expected at one point, and then you insert him, big, strong kid. We didn't get to see a whole lot of him in the spring either, but the feedback sounds promising.
Yeah, and I'll just add also that like as somebody who's also a little flummoxed by the lack of the offer, I will also admit that. But also like Deuce Knight, they had him this time last year, and then he didn't work out, and then they had to scramble too. So it's not even just, I would assume, the evaluation of their personal traits, but they want a guy who's going to fit and stick and not leave them scrambling at the last second like they did last year. So
Next question from Joe Seiler 13. This is originally said TO, but I'm going to read it off to everybody else. I think I have the answer here. Why does ND insist on limiting the number of wide receivers they use? If they can have 10 guys rotate in and contribute meaningfully, why not? Thanks.
I think there's a couple answers here. Number one, I don't think they have 10 guys that they can rotate in. Number one. And number two, if you rotate 10 players and you're in a game where you have 10 or 11 possessions, you want Malachi Fields on the field for 3 or 4 series? Do you want Jaden Greathouse on the field for 3 series? I think wide receiver Mike Brown, being a former wide receiver himself, knows that you got to get a lather going a little bit and get into the flow of the game. And so, you want your top receivers to have as many of those 10, 11, 12 series as you can possibly get. So I think that's it. But they don't, I mean, hitting the ground running with 10 receivers, nobody can do that. And I want to, after you guys comment, I want to make I want to comment about, people are asked about Cam Williams. I did the counting down on him recently. I want to comment on him about route running that we talk about. But I want you guys to chip in here first.
Well, the quick thing about 10 receivers is I don't think people understand that you don't all have room for, you have to have reps in practice. You prepare varsity receivers. The other guys go to the scout team. You don't have more than 7 wide receivers on your varsity, sometimes 8. And it's a matter of trust. So on top of wanting to play your best guys Priester, let's even pretend over the course of a 16-game season, they don't even all play varsity. Like, I don't think people understand there are 2 fields once practice starts. There's a scout team guys, and there's guys that are going to play in the game. You can't have that many. If you ever find a school that has 10 awesome wide receivers that they can rotate through, they're going to revolutionize college football, I think, because that's just not how it works. You can't, you would have to have 20 wide receivers in your program to have 10 that play.
When the season starts, I guarantee you every major college coach in the country is looking at his watch because they don't have enough time during the week to prepare.
Yeah.
They don't, there aren't enough reps. We need more reps. And so with that mindset, yeah, you can't just freely rotate guys in. If you ever get, Tim, how many do you say they need? You need a 7th, right?
You need a 7th, yeah. And Mike Brown, all the receivers coaches say, "Oh, I'd love to have more," but that's just kind of the fun thing they say, and they know they're not getting it. What was your segue on Cam that you were asking, Tim?
Well, like there's a lot of conversation about, he's got to get better at route running. He's got to get better, and so what exactly does that mean? I want to talk to Mike Brown about this, and he may shoot it down, but I think this is accurate. What people don't understand is a great athlete, and I'm not saying that this is Cam Williams' issue, okay? But I'm just saying to be a wide receiver on a major college level week after week after week, you got to have balls, man. You got to have courage to go out there and know that you are going to get drilled regularly when you are unprotected trying to catch a football. Again, I'm not saying that that's the issue with Cam Williams, but what I am saying is not everybody can go out there week after week, practice after practice, game after game in particular, and open yourself up for hit after hit. Can you maintain your route when you know a couple seconds ahead of time that you're going to be unprotected and drilled? I think there's a finite number of guys that have the courage to do that. And I think a lot of times when we talk about route running, that's what limits a lot of guys.
This one from PD Halls. Riley Leonard accounted for 38 touchdowns last year, including 21 through the air. He wants to know an over-under of 23.5 passing touchdowns for the Irish this season.
I went with over. I mean, I looked back, going back to Drew Pine's season, even in 10 starts, he still had 22. Now, he was throwing a lot of those passes to Michael Mayer, which I don't think Notre Dame has a Michael Mayer, but they've definitely upgraded their receiver core this year. And I think they're going to kind of transition to, I mean, obviously they still have an excellent running game, but some of those passes can also be to a Jeremiah Love and people like that too. So I think I would go over.
Go ahead, Eric.
Go ahead, Eric.
I think I would go over as well. And for me, it comes down to, obviously, Riley Leonard had so much utility in like short yardage and creating opportunities there that are going to go to Jeremiah Love. But on the flip side of that, you guys talked about this in the last podcast, they're probably going to find themselves in more positions, whether in like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, and at longer down in distance. That in and of itself is going to lend towards more attempted explosive passing plays and more opportunities to create that. And then kind of leaning into the last wide receiver question, Notre Dame probably has its best wide receiver room since Chase Claypool left with this year's group.
Yeah.
So when you have that kind of weaponry, even with a new quarterback, you almost have to be scoring more. If the offense is going to be what we think it is, you almost have to be scoring more through the air to be able to sustain, because as much as we're going to give Love more carries and everything, he cannot carry the full load. And we know that Jadarian Price is not going to be your short yardage back. Okay, how's that going to open it up? Well, maybe that's going to become Eli Raritan dump downs and short yardage and things like that. So there's just going to become more utility for momentary access in key situations that I think will lead to more touchdowns from the passing offense.
Tim, one word answer, over under.
I'm over, but close. I can't do one word because they rarely go over. Ian Book went over with 34 in 2019.
Okay,
but
that's my
Ben. Yeah.
What if I set the line at 25.5?
I just go under. That's how tight it is. I think I would be right there.
Yeah, because I think 23.5 is maybe a touch too low, especially if you play 16 games again.
Well, yeah, that adds up.
Yeah. First time starters at quarterback, even guys as great as CJ Carr, or potentially great as CJ Carr is, and I believe that, even though I have him 8th on our preseason list. Where do you think we'll be next year when
I do think he'll be a touch higher,
I,
actually.
I bet he'll be a lot higher than that. Wow. Yeah, 20, I just think 23 and a half is a little low for a guy of CJ Carr's abilities and
I
the
just
receiving
figured
core.
35 rushing touchdowns, add another 25, and then you're
Yeah.
hitting, that's about the limit.
Yeah. 13 games. Yeah, you have potentially a great offensive line, but you're not going to waste Malachi Fields. I mean, Malachi Fields is going to score at least 8, right?
Yeah, I'm sticking,
Yeah,
if it's 13
probably.
games, if it won't be 13, I hope, but if it's 13 games, I'm sticking at just under 25 and a half.
Yeah. We have a question from Dallas fan in DC. When will all the wide receivers for the 2025 season be available to practice with CJ Carr and Kenny Minchey for timing and chemistry?
I'm verified to make sure, but it's now. They are they're on campus. They've started workouts, and yeah, summer's longer these days. The off season's shorter and summer's longer, and that includes the freshmen have arrived as well. That includes for college football players. Man, that was not much of a break, right?
Boy, it sure doesn't seem like it.
No, didn't they used to report it on the 21st and 25th range and
I mean,
stuff like that?
it's been 7 weeks since spring ended. I mean, because
Yeah, but they had to be in school. I'm saying like going home,
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
no doubt about it.
No, but the good news is they're there and that process is starting. That's why I included that question.
Yeah,
I want
I
people to
saw
know.
some video out there. Somebody took a video from
From
a
the
high up.
construction site.
Yeah, from the construction site, exactly.
We could see them at Irish Invasion. They were watching from the construction site, just watching out the windows. You could see them just because they had the laminated green vests. It was very funny to watch. You could tell they were cheering whenever our boy Larson made a catch. There was cheers from the construction site.
I did not see that video. I'm gonna have to look that one up. That's pretty good times. Final question from Coach Aguilar. And Eric, I think you're on this one first, but TP, you could definitely chime in. What parts of ND recruiting have drastically improved in head coach Marcus Freeman's era? Can you tell me some recruiting stories about an ND coach's evaluation that still impress you today? And I think Drew, you can obviously hit that former question as well.
I think
Go ahead.
diving into the first part of this, what parts have improved? First thing is aggression. I cannot tell you how many conversations when I was in the office where we would watch film of a guy and be like, wow, he's really good. And then it would kind of just peter out like, yeah, well, he hasn't expressed any interest. We don't really have any reason to go after him. And that was it. That was the end of the conversation. You just kind of be like, okay, I guess we're going to cross him off the list. Move on to the next guy. So uh, aggression is definitely a big thing. I also think that the overall process and that Marcus Freeman outlined with the new staff in place, the way they try to have a cohesive group process for offers, and it doesn't lean too heavily into any one individual. That is a significant improvement. That was not universal in the Brian Kelly era and previously, but there were definitely prospects where there was a lot of resistance in the room, but maybe the position coach or the head coach really liked them, so they kind of got pushed through. And I think that the quality assurance and the safeguards there are a little bit more defined at this point for Notre Dame, which is ultimately good for the health of the program. And then one I'll also throw in here as an evolving one. Over the course of the Marcus Freeman era, the NIL operation, even with high school recruits, as much as it gets bemoaned on the board and everything, has improved dramatically, especially since it started at zero. So it's quite a bit improved on that end. And then to the second question, I wrote down just a handful of names and quick reasons. We already talked about Joe Alt and Anthony Knapp, under recruited guys, were very good. I'll give Autry Denson a shout out here, the rare Denson shout out for recruiting. Tony Jones Jr., he found him when he was a 3-star, absolutely loved him, loved the personality. He ended up becoming I think it was at the time, an Army All American. Kyron Williams, one of the weirdest evals in the world, very weird body shape, plays almost like a wide receiver, masquerading as a running back, didn't test extremely well, runs better in pads than he does running a 40. Just a weird evaluation, and Notre Dame stuck it. Ian Book. Ian Book was a pivot point 3-star when they had a few options of pivot point 3-stars, and they chose the right one. So I think that Tommy Rees should get credit for that. JD Bertrand, Notre Dame took him when he was determined not to be a take at Georgia. Georgia probably regrets that one looking back. And now JD Bertrand is an NFL player as a 3-star who at one point was not guaranteed a scholarship his freshman year at Notre Dame. Cam Hart was taken as a 3-star athlete with length who could play on either side of the ball and became one of the best corners in recent Notre Dame history.
That's a heck of a one if they had any plans on moving him to corner, because that's That was quite
I
a
know that there was at least a line can also play corner in his player profile because I wrote it. But I don't know beyond
congratulations
that.
to him.
Jaden Thomas was a
Way
guy
to go.
who
You saved the day, Eric.
I did it. Jaden Thomas is also a guy. I thought the eval was good. I always watching Jaden Thomas thought he was a very good baseball player who didn't separate enough, and I was wrong. So that was a great eval. And the last one for you, what probably my worst take on a prospect in recent memory. I thought Mitchell Evans was an athlete who would not play at Notre Dame because they had too many good tight ends and he would never find his footing. And whoa, that was a bad take. That guy was awesome.
That's a hard eval, though, man. That's a
Yeah,
really hard eval.
High
yeah, it
school
was.
QB, remember everybody listening. That makes it tough too,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You guys got anything to top that from Eric Thomas? Probably not, huh? That was
Go ahead, Drew.
I mean, I think my biggest thing in the difference is like I think before Notre Dame often took 3 stars that were kind of more towards their ceiling already in high school that you knew like, okay, we know this guy will be a player and we have a good idea. Whereas I think Marcus Freeman era, they're more willing to take some chances and some guys that have some elite tools that are just really raw. I mean, I even look at Luke Talich, who is a guy they didn't get here on scholarship. But I mean, my dad's from Cody, Wyoming. Cody, Wyoming is in the middle of nowhere. It's a very small town near Yellowstone and not even the most popular entrance of Yellowstone. And they went out him. They pursue a guy like that who is, kind of playing both ways. And now he's competing to be a starter as a junior and obviously got on scholarship pretty quickly. So I think they're looking for guys that have elite traits. And then if they get on the field, that's a good thing. Whereas before, I think they're like, well, at least this guy's not going to hurt us if we need to use him in a game.
I didn't think Kyron Williams' high school film was very impressive.
No.
And I can be a hardhead like when it comes to offensive linemen that fall on guys that they've blocked to the ground. Like I can't get it out of my head. I'll take it to my grave. I'll always feel the same way when I see a guy that does that. Similarly, running backs that won't run between the tackles. Jeremiah Love did not want to run between the tackles at all, at all, at all. Obviously, he had great speed, but I looked at him and said, dude, if you're not going to run between the tackles, you're not going to have a whole lot of success at Notre Dame.
hopefully someday he will run between those tackles.
Yeah, well, he
Still waiting.
well, it was like the story that I wrote the other day using some of Marcus Freeman's comments. He is a complete back. And like when he started running over people this past season, I just didn't anticipate that. And remember Tim, he pointed out he hurdled the defender and then put his shoulder down
Yes,
and put
Freeman
somebody
pointed
on
out,
after that. And that to me is the epitome of a complete back, all within one running.
I contend if that run over play, if all that would have happened inside the 5, so it was a hurdle and a run the guy over the goal line, that would be the most replayed, second most replayed run of his career for the rest of his life instead of the 98-yarder. But it happened around the 15-yard line, so he ended up out of bounds. That was fun, guys. I enjoyed that. Eric Thomas bringing the heat on that last one. That was good. Mitchell Evans. I hope he wasn't listening because no, that's a hard evaluation, obviously, for a guy like that.
Every time I think about him, I just hear my own take, like, yeah, he'll never play. Just, oh God.
And by the way, I didn't say they shouldn't take Jeremiah Love.
No.
I didn't say that.
It's good that good that you clarified that because somebody right now would be live radio. You'd be in trouble. That is it for this edition of Irish Illustrated Insider. We will be back on Thursday, June 12th. Until then, for Drew Mentok, Eric Thomas, and Tim Priester, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thanks for watching and listening.